so many questions with the Bengals this offseason. So we got our 5 burning questions for the Bengals. Our first
question. And there
question,
are more, but these are the 5 burning
These are the 5 ones that we came up with. The first one is obvious. How many offensive linemen will they sign? We're saying in free agency. What do you think?
It's got to be at least 2. I can't imagine you don't, and we'll get to this question, but you don't let Trey Hopkins probably walk because of salary cap, which leaves center wide open. And then you have to decide, are you going to re-sign Riley Reif and make him the right tackle, or are you going to go free agency? And if you don't, then are you going to go free agency at guard? They have to at least get 2 starting linemen from that, maybe 3. 3's probably pushing it too much. You might be able to re-sign a Quentin Spain or somebody along those lines, but you got to at least come out of this with 2 starting offensive linemen. You have to.
Are you going more tackles or are you going interior?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I think it depends on what do you do with Riley Reif. What, and this is going to be one of our questions as well. What do you do with Jonah Williams? Where do you envision him being? Can you get Teron Armstead? And if you can, well, then now he's your left tackle and you decide otherwise. So I think a lot of it depends on who can you sign and at what price in order to go get more guys. Because there's a lot more than that's to this offseason, trust me.
Our next burning question for the Bengals is going to be one of their biggest signings. It's the reveal. What do you do with Jesse Bates?
I think they franchise tag him in the interim. It's coming up pretty quickly to do that, and then they can negotiate with him and try to re-sign him by July 15th to a long-term contract. Listen, Jesse Bates was great in the postseason. He was 2020 Jesse Bates in the postseason. 2021 regular season Jesse Bates, and he even talked about it to his credit, was not great. And so at one point this year, you thought, Bengals, you're smart for not re-signing him for all that money. I do think, though, that he is a cornerstone piece for them. I think they know it from a locker room and then what you saw him do when games really mattered in the playoffs. I think the short term is franchise tag, try to work on a long-term contract. If not, well, then you can do it all over again if you so desire. And so I think that's where the sides have to meet. So he'll be back with the Bengals in some way, shape, or form.
Our next burning question, there's so many free agency issues, things that they need to figure out as they go forward. But our third question is, what position is Jonah Williams? He's going to be on the team. Left tackle, right tackle, guard. He's played them all. He's versatile.
And that's just it. I mean, if you got Teron Armstead on a deal that you like and you feel good about, plugging another place, perhaps you kick Jonah to right tackle. But if you can get Teron Armstead, get Riley Reif on a team-friendly deal, maybe Jonah kicks into guard. The good part about Jonah Williams is the versatility piece of it. Listen, he's not an awful left tackle. He's not a great left tackle, but he's a piece on that line that you can count on at some spot. So I think that's the great part to them. But they have to decide, what do we want with Jonah Williams? And maybe they don't know until they get into free agency and decide what they can address and what they can sign. The worst, I guess, this isn't even a worst case situation. But if worst comes to worst, he can still be your starting left tackle. He was the starting left tackle on a Super Bowl team, right or wrong, and he was by far the least piece that you worried about on that offensive line. So I think it's a good problem to have that you got the versatility of where to put him, but they have to make that decision.
Jonah Williams, by far not the issue that the Bengals had on the offensive line as we move forward for our fourth burning question. Only 2 to go. Our fourth question, as it reveals, who will be the cap casualties?
I think there's 2 for sure. I think there's 1 for sure and maybe a second. Trey Waynes has got to be a cap casualty. He's $10.8 million in savings against the cap. He counts $15 million against the cap. 5 of that's prorated bonus money that they have to put towards the cap. But you can save $10 million in what his salary would be. I can't imagine they keep him around when you can take that money and do so much else with it. And I think Trey Hopkins, he's about a $6 million savings of cap. And I love Trey. I love everything Trey stands for. He's one of the favorite guys I've ever talked to in the locker room when we used to be able to talk to guys in the locker room. And even when he's done Zooms, he's just great. And, battled through the knee. And to his credit, I mean, it shouldn't be discounted of the fact that guy answered the bell every single week except one. I mean, he was just a warrior, wasn't very good. The grade said he wasn't very good. So I think those 2 guys for sure are cap casualties. And then you got to decide what do you do with some other free agent guys, Larry Ogunjobi's of the world, B.J. Hill, and whether or not to re-sign him. Quentin Spain, we mentioned him. And honestly, even what do you do with backup quarterback with Brandon Allen? Do you bring Brandon Allen back, or do you say, hey, we got a Super Bowl ready team. We need a backup quarterback if something happens to Joe that we feel good could start 4, 5, 6 games and win us games. Brandon can win you a couple. He can be a stopgap for a game or 2. I don't think long-term he's probably the answer. So they've got a lot of questions in that regard.
And our final one with the biggest question of all, when you're picking 31 in the draft, what do you address in the draft? And we're talking right now early because we know they're going to address certain positions,
right.
But where do you think they go early?
Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that if you could move up and package some guys to go get a starting corner, a right-away guy, because it's a position I think you've seen guys can come out of college and play right away. I think the one thing that maybe the handful of drafts before Jonah Williams taught them, and they really kind of rolled the dice there too a little bit, although Jonah was coming out of a program that's a little better suited for pro offensive linemen, is College offensive linemen are a crapshoot, man. Billy Price looked like a guy who could play, can't play. Cedric Boye, Jake Fisher, I mean, they've addressed some of these. They've whiffed on a lot of these guys in the draft. And I don't think it's because they've not done their due diligence or good. I think it's just a hard position to project. But corner, they need a lockdown corner. If you're going to let Trey Waynes walk, and right now you're really thin at the position. Eli Apple's a free agent. Trey Flowers is a free agent. Darius Phillips is a free agent. I mean, some of these guys that you're like, well, I don't care if he's gone. Well, you got to have somebody play the position. To me, if you could package some guys to get up and get to Sauce Gardnerville, I'd be all in on that. I don't know what it would take to get there and where that would land. It would be pretty high. But I think the kid's a great corner. He's going to be a great corner in this league for a long time. Sign me up for that. But if not, you've got to address corner somewhere really early, first or second round, depending on how that thing falls.